Let's start our meeting, and today we have very interesting joint presentation of Irina Yeремина and Елена Катырла, Teleworking and employability in the time of COVID-19. Irina, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. So let's start our seminar. With the spread of coronavirus infection, the scientific community has increased its interest in studying the impact of the pandemic on economic processes and their consequences for the economy. And researchers in developing and developed countries have attempted to assess the demand caused by the pandemic and to describe transformations in market mechanisms. Therefore, the topic of my presentation today is employability in the time of COVID-19. A little small words about background. The COVID-19 pandemic had a strong impact on both macro and micro processes. So economies around the world firstly experienced a drop in GDP, restrictions were imposed everywhere, and borders between countries were closed. Therefore, the new realities required an adjustment of markets and the economy as a whole. And on the slide, you can see the graph, which is demonstrated the average annual hours actually worked per worker in different countries. As you can see, with the spread of COVID-19 in 2020, on Europe, North America, and Asia, there was a drop in working hours. Concerning the Russia, also there was a drop in average number of weekly hours worked in Russia in first quarter of 2020. You can see on the graph on the right, and on the left you can see that concerning the unemployment rate in Russia, there was a growth in the beginning of 2020. Also, moreover, to ensure safety and prevent the spread of COVID-19 infection, employers were forced to move workers to remote work. However, not all jobs can be performed online without losing the efficiency. Therefore, the research question of my work is formulated as: how did employment change during COVID-19, and what was the relationship between the ability to work online and this change in working hours? To achieve my goal, I need to perform certain tasks, including determining the effects of the technical ability to work online and working hours during the pandemic. Also propose and justify some factors, such as teleworkability, gender, presence of children, and others. And also evaluate the factors affecting the change in working hours using some econometric analysis. Also some words I want to dedicate to literature review and tell you about some results and ideas of other researchers in the context of COVID-19 and employability. The recent COVID-19 pandemic, which emerged in December 2019 in China and has spread worldwide, has become a serious problem for people and for economies around the world. Global import and export chains are disrupted, economic activity was reduced, and countries around the world imposed restrictions which influence the labor market. And there were some mechanisms from the labor demand side and from the supply side. First of all, because of the coronavirus restrictions, many businesses were closed because of the face-to-face contact between the colleagues. And therefore, workers were laid off, took unpaid leave, or as the variant, worked remotely. From the commodities demand side, the decline in economic activity, the decline in salaries led to a drop in demand for goods and services. Identified the concept of the teleworkability, which means the technical ability to work online using certain devices, electronic devices. And also, they investigate which tasks and occupations can be done remotely and why, and some are not. And tasks related to manual labor are of crucial significance. So, moreover, they also confirm that the increase in the prevalence of the teleworkability jobs during the COVID-19 increased from 3 to 5% to 30%. Also, in the another work of Su and others, authors find the causal relationship between the COVID-19 cases and death and unemployment. And the more cases and deaths of COVID-19 were recorded in the country, the greater the unemployment was. Also, huge layers of works were dedicated to different factors which influence the working hours and employment besides the teleworkability. And there were some factors, some individual factors and workplace factors. To individual factors, we can say gender, presence of children, educational level. And for the workplace factors, we can mention region, industry, and size of enterprise. As for the gender, women reduced working hours more than men. However, women benefited from the ability to work online as they more presented in the teleworkability industries. Also, concerning the presence of children, mothers with children demonstrated the greatest reduction in working hours in a comparison with women without children, and with comparison to the fathers with children. However, this reduction was compensated for those who have the ability to work online during the pandemic, and they reduce their working hours less than those who didn't have the opportunity to work online. Concerning the education, people who has higher education, people who has a diploma, they reduced their working hours less than people who didn't have the high education, who didn't have a diploma, while the people who has less than secondary education showed the greatest drop in working hours and in the shifts between employment and to unemployment. Also, as for the workplace factors, we can mention, for example, the industry. So the COVID-19 outbreak affected all sectors of the economy. However, the effects from the pandemic are not evenly distributed throughout the economy. And the sectors most affected by the pandemic were services, retail, trade, and transportation, while such industries as real estate, construction, financial and insurance spheres, business spheres, and IT sector were the least affected. Moreover, also there is a regional difference in the intensity of the labor market response to COVID-19. And authors Duer and Comporta found that employment in some regions of Europe has higher unemployment risk indices, while the others, for example, North Europe, is the least exposed region. And this variance in regional exposure can be explained by sectoral effects. For example, in Europe, in South region, revenues from the tourism sectors and restaurant businesses account for a large share of GDP, while these spheres were the most affected during the COVID-19. In Russia, so maybe there can be the same effect. Last but not least is the size of the enterprise and the prevalence of state-owned enterprises. And also Dwyer and Kambakorda argue that economic consequences of the pandemic are particularly severe among small firms, not among big firms. Small firms are more prone to financial instability than large firms. And moreover, enterprises with state participation are widespread in Russia. So their market share was 50% in 2020. And most commonly state-owned enterprises are less affected by crisis than private firms. Therefore, it's also important to investigate such factor as the size of enterprise and state-owned enterprises. So, concerning the hypothesis, the main hypothesis of my research is that individuals in occupations with high teleworkability index reduced their working hours less than those people without the ability to work online. However, there are also some vulnerable groups, as for example, women with children, people with low level of education, or people who are employed in affected industries or in small enterprises. So there, because of that, there could be some group specific, and therefore we should need to have a robustness check. So, concerning the methodology and data, the analysis of the impact of restrictions on labor market response involves work with panel data, and to assess how teleworkability influences the labor force participation at the time of COVID-19. It will be used the difference in difference estimation. So difference in difference method was proposed by CARD, and author compares employment growth at two stores to estimate the effect of the minimum wage price. And the main advantage of such a method is the unbiasedness and the consistency of the result, and characteristics that unchanging over time are ignored as we take the difference. However, to use such a method, we should propose some assumptions. And first of all, the groups should be stable over time. Secondly, there is no spillover effect. And the third is that there should be a parallel trend. Which means that in the absence of treatment, in the absence of COVID-19, on average, both groups should have experienced the same trend in outcomes. So after that, in current research, as I said, it will be investigated the effect of COVID-19 on different groups, on working hours. And the treatment group will be workers who are employed in the professions with higher values of teleworkability, while the control group will be people without the ability to work remotely. And average treatment effect will be equal to the mean outcomes in working hours between control and the treatment group. Also, in my research, I will plan to use triple difference in difference, which was presented by Gruber. And Gruber, in his research, investigate how the mandated maternity benefits affects females' wage and employment. And as several state governments passed the law that mandated childbirth by covered comprehensively in health insurance plans. So, concerning the data, my research is based on the RLMS-HSE data for 2019-2020, and the sample includes 11 630 observations. Moreover, as the key significance for this paper has the teleworkability, the RLMS data do not have such indicator. And I used the values which were presented in the research of Sestero and others. And authors determined the values of the teleworkability for different occupations, which then I added to my data using the parameter, as you can see on the slide, which represents the international code of occupations of the main place of work. So also on the slide, you can see how my models looks like. As for the difference in difference model, on the left side, we have the logarithm of actual working hours, while on the right, we have the teleworkability index parameter, binary time variable, and the intercept. As for the triple difference in difference, in the model, we added additional individual characteristics, for example, gender, presence of children, and so on. Also, on the preliminary results, we checked the residuals for heteroskedasticity using White's test, and heteroskedasticity was not detected, therefore we didn't check it twice. Here on the slide, also we measures on the data the mean values of teleworkability across different groups in terms of individual characteristics and workplace factors. So as we can see, in 2019, women are more presented in the industries with higher values of teleworkability. For women, so it is higher more than twice. If we compare people without children and with children, there is no great difference between them. However, the education is a crucial factor. As we can see, people with higher values of education with diploma are presented in teleworkable industries more than low educated people. Concerning the marital status, there is also a slight difference between single people and married people. Concerning rural and urban areas, also there is a slight difference. In urban areas, there is the higher teleworkability mean index in 2019. As for the size of the enterprise, as we can see, small enterprises are more presented in the teleworkability in the teleworkable industries than large enterprises. Also concerning capital city, so capital city includes Moscow and St. Petersburg, and other cities are included in other group. So as we can see, people who live in Moscow, who work in Moscow and St. Petersburg, has higher values of teleworkability than those who work in other regions. And concerning the industry, as we can see, the teleworkability index is equal between less affected and the most affected industries. And I should mention maybe that less affected industries includes such industries as tourism sector, as catering, sports, science, culture, and retail trade sectors, while the most affected industries includes industrial sector, includes IT, finance, insurance sectors. Also, on the next slide, you can see some descriptive statistics about the main variables which I used during my research. However, maybe the more preferable picture is here. Here, I compare the changing in working hours during the pandemic between different groups, between men and women, and other characteristics. And as you can see, the drop in working hours were everywhere for all different demographic groups. However, if we, for example, compare men and women, we can mention that women work less than men during both periods of time. Also, people with and without kids is equal. Also, people with high level of education also work less than people with low level of education. About single people and married people, maybe there is some equal. Rural, urban, the same. Small enterprises, large enterprises, also the same working hours during the 2019-2020, and other characteristics is not also so significant. I want to dedicate some words to average drop in logarithm of working hours by industry by the RLMS data. And as you can see, the biggest drop in logarithm of working hours in 2020 was in sport and tourism industry, also in public services, also in science and culture, and also mass media, healthcare, finance, and the lowest drop were in real estate, in machinery construction, and others industrial sectors. So concerning the results, the empirical part of my research. So firstly, I regress the model for the whole sample, and as we can see, there was a drop in the logarithm of working hours in 2020. However, we also examined the effect from the teleworkability, and as we can see, people who had the ability to work online in 2020 has a positive parameter here. Therefore, they reduce their working hours less than those who didn't have the opportunity to work online. Also, the same models, I regress by different subsample. For example, if we take into account women, they also reduce working hours in 2020. However, they has a significant coefficient because of the teleworkability. And despite the fact that men decrease their working hours less than women, they has more benefits from the ability to work online. Who has the ability to work online. So concerning the educational level, as I mentioned, high educated people include people who has a diploma, and also there was a drop in the logarithm of working hours because of the pandemic. However, for people who has a diploma, they has a positive effect from the ability to work online. Therefore, they reduce their working hours less than those without the ability to work online. So as for the people who has kids and without children, so there is also the drop, and people who had children in 2020 decrease their working hours more than those without. However, for both subgroups, there is insignificant effect from the ability to work online. As for the affected and less affected industries, also in the affected industries, there was a huge drop in the working hours because of the pandemic. However, people who were presented in the affected industries but had the ability to work remotely had some benefits and reduced their working hours less than those without this ability. Also, the same model I regress by marital status, and as we can see, as for the married people, as for the single people, there is no the effect from the ability to work online, and the drop in the working hours was equal. Concerning the Moscow and St. Petersburg as the capital cities and other cities, in the Moscow and St. Petersburg there was a huge drop in the logarithm of working hours. However, as for the other cities, there was the effect from the ability to work online, and people who live in not in the big cities and has the ability to work remotely, they have some benefits. Also, as for the urban and rural areas, the effect from the ability to work online is insignificant. However, for people who live in urban areas, the drop in the logarithm of working hours was slighter than for those who were living in rural areas. And as for the size of the enterprises, people who were presented in the larger enterprises decreased their working hours less than those who are presented in small enterprises. So also after that, I made the triple difference in different estimates to identify which significant variables are crucial for us. And so I regress 3 models for different subgroups. For example, all high educated. I also added the variable of the gender, and as we can see, as we regress the whole sample for high educated people, there was a significant effect from the ability to work online. However, if we divide the whole sample by women and men, we can see that the effect from the ability to work online among all people with high education, with a diploma, this positive effect had only women. Only women benefited from the ability to work online during the COVID-19. While the men with high levels of education did not benefit. Also, as for the people who live in other cities, so for whole sample, we can see that people who live not in Moscow and not in St. Petersburg has some benefits from the ability to work online. However, as we check it for women and men, there is no significant. So let's move on. Also, the triple difference in different estimates for women, so the same as for the previous. However, now we added the Moscow St. Petersburg as additional variable, and here for women who live in other cities, we had a positive effect from the ability to work online, and we can say that women are the most beneficial group in such period. Also, for the high educated, we get such results that people who has high education benefited from the ability to work online only if they are living in other cities, not in Moscow and not in St. Petersburg. And the same for the other cities and high educated people, also that people who live in other cities benefited from the ability to work online only if they have higher values of education, who have a diploma. And for women, women are benefited from the ability to work online only if they have the ability, or only if they have a diploma. So concerning the results of my research, so according to data, we cannot check the intensity of transition from the online format of work to remote format of work. However, we can check how did the teleworkability influence the working hours, and in overall how working hours was changed during the COVID-19. And so the first result is that people who were able to work online mentioned less drop in working hours than those who do not have this ability. And this result is consistent with Sustero results. Also, women as a vulnerable group has the benefits from the opportunity to online work. This result consistent with the Collins and others results. And also, people with high education experienced a smaller decrease in working hours than those who do not have a diploma, and this result consistent with Montanova. However, we should mention that not all people with high education and not all women had a positive effect from the ability to work online, as well as not all people who live in capital cities benefited from the ability to work online. So we should take into account different variables, higher education, capital or not capital cities, and also the gender. So thank you for your attention. There is some references, and now I open to your questions.
Thank you very much, Irina. Please, questions, comments? May I start? My
Yes.
first question is why it's important to study the change in working hours. Is this bad or good for people if number of working hours, for example, decrease? You mean that in this case the salary is also decrease and it's bad?
Maybe in this work, we want to investigate the effect from the teleworkability on the drop in working hours. So the fact that working hours were dropped during the COVID-19, however, this drop can be compensated by the teleworkability, and therefore so the main interest of such study is how did the teleworkability influence the working hours. However, of course, if the working hours are dropped during for example, because of the coronavirus infection, so people work less, they get less salary, and therefore their economic activity also drop.
If I may, I would like to add some comments to this answer, because we are co-authoring this report. Yes, we could consider that working hour is associated with the salary, although it's not the case always, as there are different schemes of wages. There are fixed wages paid per month, and they do not depend on the reduced hours. And there are wages that depend on the worked hours. So from partly we could expect that individuals might be paid less if they worked less, and teleworkability might protect workers from being paid less, but it's not the case for all workers. Talking about the total effect of reduction in working hours, we could consider economy, because what means working hours? It means production. And while working less, then producing less, and that's how we transmit the effect of reduced hours on GDP reduction. So that's why we can explain why the gross domestic product has shrunk, and to what extent it did not due to teleworkable, due to transition of works on platform.
Thank you, but I'm not fully agree with you. For example, in our university, we have really a part of fixed salary, and it's not fully depends on the total working hours. For example, you can write article 10 hours or 15 hours or 1 month. Maybe due to teleworkability, you can work less, but more productive. And at the same time create the same number of articles. In this case, decrease in working time is good for me. How do you think? And you had many people with high education, and maybe for them less working is good.
Well, let me take a word again and say that we are being teachers in university. We are in a very special mode of working, which is said to be non-standardized, that we are not having a fixed time week. Sometimes we work 50 hours, sometimes we work 10 hours, and this is a specific of such job. I understand that you expect to get a benefit from teleworking in a reduction of transactions, for example, related to commuting, that commuting cost decreased. This we do not observe, and maybe for such a specific group of workers like university staff, academicians, they would benefit twice. First, due to transition of work on platform, and second, due to decrease in commuting costs. We have not considered a decrease in commuting costs.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, the second question. As I know, there are plenty of missing observation in RLMS. How it's possible to solve this problem? I'm afraid you also have plenty of missing data. Am I right, Irina?
I think, yes, there is plenty of missing data. However, if we clear the sample from such missing values, we have approximately 12,000 of observations, and I think it's sufficient for previous research.
Yes, but I'm not quite sure that this sample is representative in, for example, for Russian regions, because usually missing data are not random. And in this case, we have some kind of bias. And one possible way to solve this problem, maybe it makes sense to use not a linear regression model, but something like a Heckman model. In the first stage, where the people reply or not reply, on some questions, and in the second stage, if they reply, for example, about number of working hours, then we estimate regression, something like this. And maybe it makes sense to add dummy variables for missing observations, something like this. But it's a real problem of RLMS. Okay, if you would you like to add something? If no, could you return? I don't remember exactly the name or the number of your slide. If I'm not wrong, slide number 12. Stop. Thank you. I see that that squares are very small in your regressions, and I'm not convinced in results for models with so low squares. Did you at least look at p-values for F statistics that all coefficients simultaneously equal to 0?
No, I didn't check. Yes, I think that it should be done. So p-values for simultaneous coefficients, yes?
Yes, I see that squares
Are small, yeah.
Yeah, very low. And in this case, if we calculate F usual F statistics, yes, it's necessary to compare p-value for that F statistic and level of significance, at least 10%. If p-value is greater than 10%, we can't choose such results.
Let me give you additional comment. Well, actually, these are simple regressions for the difference on the left side. So we test just one coefficient besides the constant. And that's why the significance of the coefficient coincides with the p-value for F statistic. So you can directly see which of the models are will give p-values significant, which will not. For example, first two will show good F values, and then for men it's not good, then for high educated it's good, and so on. Because it's a simple regression, just one coefficient to be tested.
Excuse me, did you include constant in your models?
The constant is 2020 because on the left side
I see. It's constant. But in this case, only not in all models. In some models, statistics is very low, and only constant, a coefficient of constant is significant.
Yes.
And
it doesn't suggest that we have a good F value because the constant is not tested by F statistics, right?
Yes, it's usually mean value. I see. Did you plan to add other characteristics? Could you return to the functional form of your model, Irina? Thank you. Do you plan to add some explanatory variables, X, some individual characteristics simultaneously in the same model? Not only one characteristics in each model, but all characteristics simultaneously in joint model.
So I think that for a simple difference maybe not, because so the individual characteristics are not changing over time, and as we take the difference, so it's removed. But by the triple difference, for example,
yes, I mean triple difference.
A triple difference.
The same story with triple difference. All variables are expected to be constant over time. For some people, it can happen that they got married in 2020 or got divorced in 2020, but I wouldn't say that it's such a large fraction that to be counted.
But it's a bit strange for me if we include only one variable in our model and neglect all other variables. We have omitted variable bias in usual regression. For example, if we include, for example, only gender dummy variable or high education and something like this, and not control for other characteristics. Whether it's possible.
Irina, will you answer, or should I do it?
But Irina.
But I think that if we, for example, added to the module as triple difference many of the intercept of such individual characteristics and other characteristics, then we have more problems with the biasness of the results. And
I see. I think maybe it makes sense to perform some kinds of matching, taking into account more characteristics of individuals and compare individuals from two groups using matching. With the similar characteristics, some kind of propensity score or something like this. What do you think about such non-parametric techniques?
Well, with Irina, we have not discussed a combination of propensity score matching and difference in difference, although, yes, it's possible to make propensity score matching for 2019 data, and after weighing matching pairs or, say, matching groups, to make a difference in difference. That's called doubly robust estimate, which is possible to arrange, actually, and that's a good idea. Thank you.
I highly appreciate this idea. Thank you. I think it makes sense. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Irina. Dear students, other comments, ideas? Very interesting results, really.
I have a small question just to get a clearer picture about your research. This Teleworkability index, like, what is the range for this index? Is it like linear? And could you just provide a few examples how it relates to different industries, and what were the maximum minimum values with corresponding industries in your sample?
Yes. As for the Sestero, the Teleworkability index is a continuous variable from 0 to 1. However, in my module, I make teleworkability as a binary variable, and the teleworkability equals to 1 if the continuous variable is higher than 0.5, and equals to 0 if the continuous variable teleworkability from Sestero less than 0.5. And as for example, I think that I don't have a picture by industries in the teleworkability, only mean drop in logarithm. But industries with lower indexes of teleworkability are, for example, industrial sector, for example, manufacturing, while the highest values of teleworkability are in IT sector, in financial, in insurance sectors. So.
And what's about how many observations per industry approximately do you have?
As you can see here, so there is industries are divided to two groups, as less affected and most affected. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in 2020 there is approximately 5,000, and in 2020 there is approximately 4,500. And as for the mean, it's not about teleworkability. Yes, sorry.
And is it possible to use this index as a continuous variable?
Yes, it's possible to do in the same framework.
Interesting. Yeah. And why did you decide to make it binary?
I will help. Binary index is easy to interpret.
Okay. Well, thank you for your answers, I guess. Any more questions, dear students?
Actually, I have questions about the parallel trees, because we all know that the IDs must have the parallel tree hypothesis, but sometimes we will use some variables maybe only 2 years or 3 years, but it can let us to do the parallel tree testers. But how can we assure made the parallel trade test the hypothesis.
How do we test for the parallel trend, you mean?
Yes, because if we only have the 2 years, the data, we can't do this test.
Yeah, well, we have 2 years. One is before the treatment and after is just 2020. So these are 2 years. And it's not possible to test for the parallel trend assumption. Well, it's possible to explain where do we get this idea of parallel trend assumption. And the idea is pretty much about more or less slow-paced development of teleworkable jobs, if not COVID-19. If not COVID-19, then it would be a gradual increase in teleworkable jobs, and there would be some shift and reduction in working hours, or maybe increase in working hours, maybe some gain from commuting costs reduction, but it would be to quite a slow pace. Whereas COVID-19 has made revolutionary changes in the mode of work for those who were able to move on platforms. So
Okay.
this is just an explanation that you can put in text.
Yes, I understand. And actually, I have another questions about the representative samples as the professors has mentioned earlier. Actually, my questions, of course, we use the telework abilities, but if some people didn't answer the questions, it is missing status. How can to test if it is have the structures changes? Actually, I don't know, but maybe we can do the true testers, but I don't know if it is right or not.
Well, to be honest, we have not done anything with missing data. There are several questions that allow us to understand the status of an individual. In particular, it's not only working hours variable, but also the answer whether the individual is working or not. And there are several other indicators like getting a wage and getting some distribution of time during a month. So based on several answers, it's actually possible to figure out whether the individual is just refusing to answer about working hours, or that individual simply doesn't work. And I would say that data are quite reliable. Individuals who didn't work didn't tell about hours, but those who worked actually said what was the working hours. The problem was in another matter, that some individuals were showing quite large values, like 720 hours a month. That was what we considered to be outliers. And Irina can explain how she worked with outliers.
Firstly, we think that those who say that they work more than, for example, 300 of hours, they work as, for example, on
shift workers.
Yes, they shift workers, and moreover, when we stable our sample, the maximum working hours is not equals to 700, but as I remember, 500, and it's more appropriate for us.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Actually, there was a drop from the bottom line if I remember correctly, was it 100 hours or 120? So we considered at least full-time workers to be compared with each other.
Yes, actually, maybe because actually my work is similar to this, is all about the label marketers. But actually, I worried about they will influence the representative sample. So actually, I want to do the troll tester to know if it is the structure changes, if we drop the values, but I don't know it is make work or not.
So you would like to use a Chow test?
Yes.
To do what? Chow test tests regressions into models. So what is your first model?
Maybe the idea is because I wonder.
Just let's say simple. What is on the left and what is on the right? What is a y dependent variable and what is explanatory variable set?
In my work is the the incomes. Because I think if actually this income is the same of the
income. Income
yes.
On the left is a dependent variable, and now I understand your problems that you would like to compare the parameters in the regression models in 2019 and 2020, and you suspect that besides the effect of the year, there would be different responses to such explanatory variables as gender, family size, maybe working status, I don't know, education, and so on. Well, you can test.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? If we exhausted our questions and comments, thank you very much, Irina, for so interesting presentation. Thank you, Lena Stanislavna, for explanation. Really very interesting. And now we can stop our meeting today. Thank you.